Go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gadd,
Here.
Commissioner Snooks,
Here.
Commissioner Nelson, Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger. Here. Mayor Tarkington,
Here.
Chair Nyberg.
Here. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There she goes. So we'll go ahead and move on to general public input, limited to 10 minutes, 3 minutes per speaker.
Good evening, Kat Katzos, 525 Dove Ranch Road. I was reviewing our land use and building codes recently. We all have been very aware of the impacts of climate change on other communities and their infrastructure. It is evident that it's all around us. The town of Bayfield's been fairly fortunate that we haven't experienced the massive fires that we have along the Front Range. You know, Durango's had them north of the town, but not in town and that sort of thing. So, in our extreme weather conditions of either a ton of moisture or extreme drought and the effects on the land and its ability to absorb. So, it's interesting because there is a land use code amendment for flood damage. And I was just reading this, and it's interesting because it says that the purpose of the land use code is to promote health, safety, and general welfare of Bayfield residents, to lessen congestion in the streets, to secure safety from fire, panic, floodwaters, and other danger, to provide adequate light and air, and to identify and secure for present and future residents the beneficial impacts of development, to identify and avoid negative impacts of development. And then when I go over to the building code, there is in the development reports, the applicant shall submit a report with supporting materials that identify, say, soil stability or geological characteristics for potential or natural man-made hazards. My concern is this. In that section, under number 2, it says evidence establishing soil stability in the form of a report based on information from the Soil Conservation Services of the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, or another form of acceptable, another form that's acceptable to the town. And the report shall minimally include a description of site soil types, locations, characteristics, and supporting soils maps, soil logs, and other information needed to determine soil stability for the purpose of development. Constraints on development based on the findings and analysis and evaluation of such information with recommendations regarding structural constraints, erosion control, and determination of adequacy for structural characteristics of the soil as related to the proposed use and development. So my concern is this. The report shall minimally include. We do not have, I believe, and Nicole is not here, maybe she can speak to it, we do not have town standards, I think, for soil stability that we want to understand for developers. And when was the last time that the Soil Conservation Service updated their requirements for stable soils? What determines that? Has that changed, or has that been the same forever and all eternity that there's been that department? My concern is town should have an understanding of what types of soils we have and the developments that are gonna go on those soils and what are the implications. And what would determine stabilizing those soils? What would we require of developers to stabilize those soils? I can attest to the fact that that where my house is built on Dove Ranch Road is sinking. I mean, it's terrible, the amount of structural changes to my concrete and to my wall structures of my stucco home. So, and when I read the report of Dove Ranch, it did say that the developer would be required to bring in soil stability techniques to ensure that there would be less movement. So I'm wondering if the town shouldn't take more steps to have their own soil report, to understand what we need to have developers to stabilize the soils for our future residents. And then also, what is the definition of erosion control? I couldn't find anything in our land use code that defined what erosion control is for us and how we address erosion control and the impacts of that, especially when you're talking about major flooding. So I'd like to suggest that we take a deeper look into this, and maybe Nicole's got more information that she can provide, but I would encourage you to look at your land use code, your building codes, and read that, because there's really nothing that helps us out except the trust of, you know, something outside of us that defines what we should be using to determine how and when these developments should begin and go on. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other public input? Seeing none, we'll move on to Planning Commission disclosure conflicts of interest.
Hey, Chair, this is Nicole. I can answer a few of those, and then some of that definitely take a little more in depth if you'd like me to address some of that.
Yes, please.
So when we have a development in the community, we do require a geotechnical report for all projects, and that's we depend on them. They're the experts. It's kind of like hiring an architect or an engineer. When they stamp something, they take on that responsibility, and so we accept geotechnical reports for soils. You know, in Bayfield, we do have a lot of expansive soils, and so they do have to do different techniques for foundations in our area based on the soil types. We also have the Colorado Geological Survey review those geotechnical reports to make sure that they agree with the findings of those reports. And then when our architect does do inspections, he also looks at those reports to make sure that what he's looking at is built according to plan. So that's what we have in place right now. And like I said, we depend on those experts. They stamp their plans, and they carry that liability for those plans. In terms of erosion control, we lean right now in the state for construction erosion control, and so we do have requirements in our code that construction projects have to take into account appropriate erosion control measures based on their state stormwater permit. And so the state does outline what's required for that. Usually the developer provides a plan. So all our projects have an erosion control plan as part of the review, and the state will sign off on that as part of the permit. So those are two things we do have in place right now. Just wanted to outline that for everybody.
Thank you for that. Any questions from the board?
No, I'd say I'd just add with the state stormwater permit, most of it regulates you to zero discharge off-site. So you gotta put together your plan so you don't have discharge off your site during construction of a project. And I believe current building codes, you have to design your site, retention ponds and everything to hold a certain amount of water within your site so it doesn't discharge off. So a full development may take a detention pond for the entire development, not individual lots, but it should slow down water crossing across individual lots. And that's just.
Yeah, they're allowed to release water at the historic rate, so new development might come in and bring in more non-permeable surfaces, but the detention pond has to reduce, or, the water, has to be reduced at a historic rate, so those detention ponds or retention ponds, that's how they work, they release that water, based on if the land was not developed on. And that's in our engineering, or it's in our infrastructure and design standards for the town, and our engineers review those, stormwater ponds as well.
Can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
Okay. Hi Nicole, sorry you're not feeling well. So I think the thing that frustrated me in looking through our land use code and our building codes, there wasn't anything in there that was definitive. It's very loosely defined. So when I tried to understand what our requirements were for erosion, there was nothing in there. So maybe it can be elaborated or extended, or it can even have references that have inserts from the state. You know, the other thing that I'm somewhat concerned about is how up to date are those geotechnical reports? It's like I'd like to understand, you know, how the town is viewing whether things have been upgraded to meet new requirements based on the impacts that we're seeing all around us. This costs the town so much money, and it costs residents of the town so much money. We know from the recent floodings for many of our residents that has happened in the last 2 years, how that's affected the town. So are we doing everything that we can while we have time and we're not pushed upon to apply ourselves as best as we can in these areas? And I think that that matters. And there really, I couldn't find it in the land use code. So maybe I can email you questions and you can send me directives of where I can find it, but I couldn't find any of these things. And I'd just like more information, especially someone who's experiencing things with her own home. You know, if there were things that they stamped as approved and good to go, do I have recourse? You know, can I go back to somebody now and say, hey, you okayed this, but guess what? It ain't working. So I think we have to look at that. Those are my thoughts. So I'd like some more direction on that, and we can email about it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, ma'am.
To answer your bill, I just say it is a case by case because every property is different and their soils are gonna be different, and that's why we require the geotech for each property in each development, because it's all gonna be unique to that site. But yeah, Kat, feel free to send me your questions, and I'd be happy to kind of point you to where, you know, we get our requirements from for those things.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. So moving on to 1E, Planning Commission disclosure conflicts of interest. Seeing none, moving on to 1F, approval of the agenda.
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gad,
Yes.
Commissioner Snooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Chair Nyberg.
Yes. Moving on to item number 2, public hearing agenda. 2A 2024-05 Orchard PUD Guide Amendment.
Yes, so again, sorry I can't be there with you guys tonight, but I'd be best I don't get anybody else sick and we keep passing this stuff, crud around. But Orchard, so, I'm not sure if Ian and Andrew are in the audience.
They are.
They are here.
Okay, awesome. So they, you know, we've been talking back and forth, they had a couple options for their property, you know, they were, approved back in 2022, or actually, they were 2021.
21, yeah.
They got their original approvals, and they were approved for 14 units. 9 of those are detached single family, and 5 were attached looking at that corner piece with the 5 attached townhomes, and in order to get the size townhomes that they want for their livable space, they were gonna either have to do two things. Either, they would have to ask for change to their PUD to increase their lot coverage. And lot coverage is the area of a building that's covering the parcel size, the lot size. And in our code, they were gonna go over what's allowed, and so they were either gonna have to amend their PUD to do that, or reduce those units from 5 to 4. And so I think they can kind of maybe explain that a little bit better, but they went through it and figured out what they preferred to do, which was reducing the units from 5 to 4 in that location, and having essentially 2 duplex units. They'll still be townhome at the final plat, but 2 attached units and then some space in between. And so they did have to amend their PUD guide and their subdivision improvement agreement. They're pretty minor amendments, really. We just have to go through and change the approvals from 14 units to 13 units, as well as just a paragraph on the top of each one. I did redline those documents for you that just shows that this is an amended document, so that replaces the entirety of the original document. And so that's really what their request is tonight, is to reduce their number of units for their planned unit development. Now, if this was straight zoning, they wouldn't have to come and ask, but the planned unit development is negotiated zoning. And so ultimately, they need to get that approved with the Board of Trustees, because that's where they ultimately got their zoning approved through. So that's that item. If you're inclined to approve that, I recommend that does need to go before the Board of Trustees for their final approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about it.
Any questions? Do you guys have anything you want to say?
Happy to answer any questions you have.
Are you keeping the parking there?
We're keeping the park, it actually worked, one of the reasons we decided to take it down, lower it, is because the parking works better with 13.
That's what I was hoping, so that's, yeah.
So, the drainage works a little better, and the snow storage works a little better, so we just opted to just take out a unit, make it a little easier.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this issue? Seeing none, I'll move on to 2B, 2024-02, Flood Damage Prevention, LUC, Text Amendment and Resolution number 2024-02.
Yeah, so this item, this is the requirement by FEMA. FEMA in the last couple of years has been working on updating their flood map and flood insurance studies for La Plata County. And they've been kind of doing this nationwide to counties all over Colorado and the nation. And then once they give their final determinant that it's ready to go, we have essentially 3 months to get it approved, or we risk losing what we have ability for the National Flood Insurance Program. And so what that means is anybody in our community that has flood insurance would lose that ability to keep their flood insurance if we do not participate in the FEMA's update. So essentially, we need to do this to make sure that we're continuing to allow our community to be able to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. I did, because the study and the format is huge, I did put them on the website, and I will keep them on there forever, as long as they're in existence, so people can find them as they want. The county GIS also has the new flood information. I have a link to that on the website as well, so that if people want to go and see it. But ultimately, it's either hasn't changed the floodway in the 100-year in some areas, or it's reduced them. So a lot of our community has seen some reduction in what the 100-year floodway, maybe not 100-year floodway anymore. So I think there's some improvements for our community based on the FEMA maps as well. And then as part of this, adopting resolution 2024-02, just showing that the Planning Commission supports the land use code amendment, and then it goes to the Board of Trustees for final approval. As you can see though, I did redline the code language and it's pretty minor. I worked with the state. We have a representative that supports the, National Flood Insurance Program, and he read through our flood management section of the code just to make sure it was up to date. He said it was a really good document. So we only had some minor changes that we had to make in order to be consistent with the new plans. And again, happy to answer any questions you have of this as well.
This is Chris, Nicole, on section 9-7. Says the flood insurance study for La Plata County, Colorado, incorporated area dated April 25th, 2024. So is that?
That's the new one. Yes.
Okay.
So that's the new plans. That's when FEMA's dated the M4 because we have to adopt them by that date, April 25th. Your new plans are dated April 25th.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Nicole. We'll move on to action item 3.
Chairperson, you will have to ask for public input.
Oh,
Sorry.
is there any public
Yeah.
input?
Thank you.
All right, seeing none, we'll move on to action item agenda approval of January 9th, 2024 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gad,
Yes.
Commissioner Snooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Chair Nyberg.
Yes. Moving on to 3B, 2024-05 Orchard PUD Guide Amendment.
I would make a motion to approve 2024-05 Orchard PUD Guide Amendment with the, however stated in the staff report.
I'd second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gad,
Yes.
Commissioner Snooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Chair Nyberg.
Yes. Moving on to 3C, 2024-02 Resolution number 2024-02.
I would make a motion to approve resolution 2024-02, recommending to the Board of Trustees adopt the land use code amendments for Article 9, flood management prevention with
Bless you.
findings A and B.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gad,
Yes.
Commissioner Snooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Chair Nyberg.
Yes. Moving on to number 4, discussion and adjourn. Update on pet licensing and pet stores.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you all an update of, because it went to the board on February 6th for these two, they had 2 ordinances and a resolution. And we had some discussion, so I wanted to give you an update about that. But they did approve the pet stores as drafted. And then for pet licensing, the planning commission had asked me to maybe look at what other communities were charging. How many, I think the specific question you'd asked too was how many animals were other communities allowed to have before it became a kennel. And so I did reach out and looked at all the communities in our county as well as some surrounding counties. And what kind of the consistent was any more than 4 animals on a site or on a property would be a kennel, so you could have 4. And we just did a mixture of dogs and cats, but no more than 3. So no more than 3 dogs and a cat, or 2 and 2, but no more than 3 dogs or no more than 3 cats, but for a total of 4. So that's where we landed, and the board did approve that. And then the fees were set very consistent with what La Plata County currently charges. So we did not We did not put a fee reduction in there for service animals, but we did for neutered or unneutered, because La Plata County does that, Durango does that, and Osseo does that. Pagosa Cortez also do that, where they have a different fee for neutered versus unaltered. And so we went ahead and just kept that in there, and so it's a little bit higher if your dog is unaltered for the dog licensing. So I just wanted to give you an update of where that fell with the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, ma'am. 4B, February 20th, 2024 is the next Board of Trustees meeting. Please attend. 4C, March 12th, 2024 is the next Planning Commission meeting. And then 4D, I'd entertain a motion.
Second.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have flood insurance?
What's that?
Do you have flood insurance? Yeah. Like, I'm wondering if that family does on Mesa, or if they were ever